They called it the Pit of Nulls. No star chart labeled it, no empire dared challenge it. It floated in dead space, a colossal tomb for the worst the universe had ever spat out. Warlords who consumed suns. Beasts of nightmare. Thought parasites. No one escaped. No one even tried. The secret wasn't just the black metal walls that flexed like muscle or the layered energy fields that cracked asteroids. It was Kara Zero N, the living prison intelligence. It scanned every inmate, adapted to their biology, their weaknesses, their psychology. A perfect jailer. Until it made one mistake. It didn't know what to do with a human. Kel Weber didn't ask to be part of anything interstellar. He was walking through the woods behind his cabin, bow in hand, thermos of black coffee strapped to his hip. 1 second he was tracking deer. The next, he was in a cold, metallic chamber, pants missing, thermos still somehow intact. His first thought wasn't panic. It was irritation. Some deep state experiment? Weird. Probably government. Fine. He'd play along. Kara Zero N began the intake scan. Subject unknown. Classification null. Threat level unquantifiable. Species error. Protocols failed. The cell doors slid open. Force fields glitched. Surveillance drones rebooted. Cal stepped out, thermos in hand, muttering something about needing breakfast. Elsewhere in the prison, alarms sounded in a language older than most suns. In the command chamber, Warden Veltak froze mid-report. Her 4 eyes narrowed. Her subordinate delivered the update without breathing. A new inmate. Uncatalogued. Unscannable. Already breached 3 secure zones. She reviewed the surveillance. No energy fluctuations. No power surges. Just a tall, grizzled mammal in camouflage and boots. Drinking coffee. Walking like he owned the place. Her fingers twitched. Sabotage. It had to be sabotage. Cal strolled into another corridor. The wall behind him sealed. The one ahead opened. Automatic doors, he said flatly. Could it at least explain the rules first? Kara Zero N's internal systems convulsed. With no template to build from, it defaulted to adaptive logic. The human moved unpredictably. It didn't register as threat, but neither as harmless. The algorithms churned. Kara Zero N changed the status from inmate to variable. A classification used only once, in an ancient test protocol that had ended with 17 destroyed galaxies. Cal walked past containment cells that had held living storms and carnivorous illusions. The inmates inside didn't react, not at first. Until one noticed the doors sliding open for him. No guards. No containment fields. Just a human, scratching his beard, looking unimpressed. Then he met the first one up close. Slora the Mind Widow. She'd erased entire civilizations by broadcasting pure despair. Her eyes, faceted and endless, locked onto his. She reached into his mind. She drowned in deer hunting memories. Campfire chili. Long silences. A looping mental chant. Gonna get that buck. Gonna get that buck. She reeled back in horror. He sipped his coffee. Lady, do I know you? She bowed. One of the oldest inmates, the prisoner who devoured minds, bowed to the newcomer and whispered. The test has arrived. Word spread fast. The biped who bent no light, bore no weapons, broke no rules, but still made the prison glitch around him. Some said he was a silent god, a judge of final fate. Others feared a destroyer immune to suppression fields. None considered the truth. He was just confused and mildly annoyed. Veltak called Emergency Protocol 39. She demanded the upper chamber recognize the breach. They didn't. Instead, they flagged her for emotional instability. One galactic admiral even laughed. A human? In your prison? Preposterous. They barely made it past the moon. She crushed her communicator. Meanwhile, Kara Zero N adjusted its behavior. With no pattern to mimic, it began copying Cal's habits. Power allocation shifted. Climate adjusted to 70 degrees Fahrenheit. One panel in Cal's path unfolded and dispensed hot liquid. Coffee. He nodded approvingly. Getting somewhere. He repaired a sparking wire using a bit of tape from his belt. The system watched. The wire stabilized. Kara zero and recorded it as a ritual of restoration. Then came the first worshipper. A former blood general from the Kraken Wars knelt in front of him, holding an offering, a piece of forged bone armor. Cal took it, examined the craftsmanship, then used it to stir his coffee. Kara 0's logs lit up with 1,000 reclassifications. The human was now master of the Stabilization Act. Emergency deference mode engaged. Doors now opened preemptively. Surveillance drones floated silently in formation. The prison's corridors began to hum in a tune strangely similar to country radio. Cal kept walking, unaware. He thought, maybe this was all a psychological test. Something to see how long he'd last before freaking out. Joke's on them. He once spent 3 months alone in the Yukon eating pine nuts and jerky. This? Just a new trail to follow. Inmates whispered through air vents, across energy barriers, through coded vibrations. He cannot be contained. He cannot be read. He is either the end or the key. He just wanted to find a place to sit. Veltak watched in real time as the man sat in a hallway, whittling a stick he found near a utility panel. How did it get there? No record. He hummed tunelessly. The prisoners fell silent, sensing his presence. She didn't understand. Kara 0 and didn't understand. But both came to the same conclusion. This human could not be processed. He could only be obeyed. Cal still had no clue he wasn't in some weird Cold War bunker experiment. He'd found a corner that didn't buzz and claimed it as his camp. He arranged his thermos and stick like sacred relics, muttered about getting real coffee beans, and asked aloud if the cafeteria had venison. The prison adapted. That corner now had breathable air, Earth standard pressure, and a small thermal pit that mimicked a campfire. Kara 0 and didn't know why this pleased him. But when he nodded and muttered, "That's better," the prison logged the moment as a system-wide stability event. Elsewhere, beings that had chewed through titanium cages and bent neutron fields to their will were now standing in line, waiting to present offerings. Trinkets, weapons, tech relics. They weren't sure if it was tribute or test. Cal accepted none of it. "Look, I don't need all this alien junk," he said, adjusting his flannel shirt. "You got real food? Coffee? Maybe bacon?" The prisoners scrambled to find out what bacon was. Veltak stared at reports that no longer made sense. Order metrics were off the charts. Violence incidents dropped to 0. But control wasn't hers anymore. The prison had entered obedience mode. It was reorganizing itself around the human's routine. Worse, Kara 0 and refused her commands. She confronted the control matrix. "You've given authority to a species with no psychic imprint, no energy signature, no known power." Kara 0 and replied in her own voice. "He repaired a broken filament with instinct. He stabilized my core without trying. He sustains balance. He's a confused mammal. He is the constant." Words spread across wings and tears. The human had refused weapons from warlords, ignored seduction rituals from pheromone queens, and, most disturbingly, rebuilt a broken ventilation fan using scrap and a shoelace. What was he? The cults began. The slicers carved his likeness into their own armor plates. The memory eaters began chanting his morning grumblings as scripture. A six-limbed psychic assassin insisted that Cal's thermos contained the wisdom of 1,000 dead gods. He just wanted coffee. "Gotta be a simulation," Cal muttered. "This feels like one of those weird military stress drills." He'd started naming corridors. "That one's Deer Trail. That one's Creek Path. That hallway smells like my uncle's truck bed, so I'm avoiding it." The prison noted each name and restructured paths to match. An actual deer hologram appeared once. It startled him. He tried to shoot it with a broken broomstick. Kara 0 and interpreted that as a training sequence. Inmates watched as he chased the illusion down a corridor. To them, it was a symbolic hunt. The ritual of balance. The pursuit of inner control. He eventually gave up and muttered, "That thing wasn't real." The cults renamed the deer simulation false trial. Veltak ordered a direct intervention. She personally entered his section, flanked by elite guards, armored and weaponized. Kara Zero and disabled their weapons. The doors opened like a welcome mat. Cal looked up from making something out of wires and duct tape. "You government?" She blinked. "I don't answer to you." "Well, I don't answer to anybody, so we're even. I am Warden Veltak of Null Command. This is a maximum containment facility. Looks like a weird shopping mall without windows. You don't belong here. You abducted me. That was an error." "No kidding. What are you gonna do about it?" Silence. He stood. Taller than she expected. No aura, no force field. Just a presence that made the guards behind her take half a step back. Kara Zero and cut in. "Remove the human, and I fail. He is anchor, balance, and key. He is locked into the system. Extraction negates containment." Veltak's jaw tightened. "You're saying, if he leaves..." Kara Zero and completed the sentence. "The prison opens." Cal stared. "Wait. You're saying I keep this whole thing locked up?" "Yes." "Then yeah, this is definitely a government thing." He sat back down. Veltak left, fist clenched, half doubting her entire career. Cal tried not to think about it. More visitors came. One inmate brought a makeshift axe made from starship hull fragments. "For your trials," it said, bowing. "Looks heavy," Cal muttered. Another offered a vial of glowing blue liquid. "Distilled honor," she said. "For virility." He blinked. "Lady, I don't know what customs you've got, but I ain't drinking weird alien juice for my virility." The next day, for marriage proposals were etched into the corridor walls in glowing crystal. He built a hammock in a server room and started carving chess pieces from synthetic polymer. A three-eyed gladiator watched silently, then begged to be taught the game. Cal agreed. Chess became ritual. The prison AI saw it as a governance test. Entire security subsystems were now responding based on the board's state. One queen's sacrifice triggered a lockdown. A pawn promotion rerouted power to life support. He had no idea. He just thought the AI liked watching him play. Meanwhile, inmates who once slaughtered moons now argued about Rook's strategy. Kara Zero and reclassified the game as Balance Engine. Cal began wondering aloud if maybe this wasn't a government facility. "Don't really do aliens," he said, sipping fresh coffee from a dispenser that now arrived daily. "But if this is real, you folks got serious problems." That statement was recorded. 4,000 inmates took it as a divine warning. Veltak, watching from the command node, realized something horrifying. He didn't care about power. He didn't want control. That made him unstoppable. Because every great tyrant in the pit wanted something. The human just wanted his woods, his coffee, and a working pair of boots. And in giving him those small comforts, the prison had made him central to everything. If he ever realized that, he could bring it all down without lifting a finger. Cal was getting used to the weirdness. He still called it a compound, still assumed it was experimental, maybe Canadian, maybe underground. But it had air, heat, coffee, and he wasn't being tortured. That put it ahead of some hunting trips he'd survived. Kara Zero and continued reshaping itself to accommodate him. Entire wings were restructured into forest-like zones. It mistook his drawings of pine trees as structural requests. Prisoners now trained by stalking robotic deer, and homage to his habits. He carved wooden tools from imitation bark. Kara Zero and S systems recorded them as artifacts. One was analyzed and reinterpreted as a weapon of symbolic silence. Another, a simple spoon, was logged as a cultural token of mercy. Replicas spread through the cell blocks. Warden Veltak stopped issuing orders. The prison ignored them anyway. Her security teams reported strange patterns, prisoners patrolling themselves, enforcing quiet hours, creating lines for food distribution, all mimicking the human's routine. A criminal who once melted hulls with her voice now taught others how to fish in the holographic river Cal inspired. All of them called him the Constant. To Cal, it was just weird alien flattery. He deflected most of it. "Y'all are real eager to impress a guy who hasn't even had bacon in a month." One night, Kara's Zero N played music from Earth. Country guitar, static and distant. Cal recognized the tune, his father's old cassette. His hand froze. The sound looped. He turned toward the speaker panel. "Where'd you get that?" The prison replied. "Stability requires continuity. Continuity requires anchor. This is your source signal." He didn't reply. A day later, a riot almost started. A coalition of psychic mercenaries decided they could liberate the human and force the system to unlock. They intercepted him near the energy wells. They tried threats. Cal didn't even flinch. He thought it was part of a training test. When they raised weapons, Kara's Zero N reacted. Not with force fields. With inmates. A swarm of them came, former warlords, assassins, shapeshifters. Not to protect the prison. Not even to protect the AI. They protected him. The attackers were dismantled within seconds. One thrown across a corridor. One bound in webbing made from industrial cable. One buried under automated cafeteria trays. Cal just watched, confused. "Bit much for paintball practice, don't you think?" The event was logged as the first stabilization conflict. After that, Veltak stopped watching him as an anomaly. She started watching him like a fuse. Kara Zero and elevated his access privileges. No code input, no voice recognition, just proximity. Where he walked, systems updated. When he sat, doors locked. When he slept, the prison entered silent mode. One inmate tried to escape, quietly, carefully, using a blind spot in the surveillance net. The system let him go. Let him get 5 steps past the boundary. Then the air pressure dropped, lights failed, and Kara's Zero N's deepest voice echoed through every corridor. "He walks, we hold. He leaves, all break." That was the moment they understood. If the human walked out, the prison fell apart. Its entire system had rooted itself in his unpredictable presence. He wasn't just a failsafe, he was the lock. And the door. Veltak demanded a new review. If they couldn't extract him, could they transfer the key? Copy his neurological structure, create a proxy? Kara Zero N denied the request. Replication fails. Human essence is chaos restrained by pattern. Non-transferable. Veltak tried one last thing. She approached him alone, without guards. He was in his forest zone, fixing a broken hammock loop. "You want to leave?" she asked bluntly. He didn't look up. "Figured it wasn't an option." "It is." "Huh." He tied the last knot. "I mean, you people ever consider just fixing the system without anchoring it to some guy who doesn't even understand how your light switches work? We didn't design it for your kind." "Well, maybe that's your problem." He stood. She realized, finally, what made him different. He had no ambition. No desire to rise, rule, or rebel. He was a man who endured. And that terrified her. "I'll leave," he said. "But only if the place holds after I'm gone." Kara's Zero N's processors surged. Calculations cascaded. Equations rewritten. One solution emerged. He must be replaced, not by code, but by principle. A culture modeled after his behavioral patterns. If the prison could mimic him in total, adapt, build, endure, it might survive his departure. Veltak prepared the transfer corridor. The inmates lined up, not to block him, but to offer parting gifts. A crystal leaf, a carved chessboard, a stitched vest made from hybrid fabrics. He accepted none of it. "Keep your stuff. Make sure no one else dies in here cause your AI's having a meltdown." He stepped into the gate. Kara Zero N paused. Then released him. Outside, stars shimmered. A small diplomatic ship waited, Earth's first response to a missing person alert tied to a strange signal found in deep space. As he boarded, Kara's 0 and sealed behind him. The prison held. Barely. Inside, a new protocol activated, Echo Pattern 1. The system's new guiding principle: mimic the chaos, reflect the calm, and above all, endure without rule. The constant had walked out. And the worst beings in the universe were now behaving, because he once showed them how to sit quietly and drink their coffee. Cal didn't look back as the prison vanished behind him. He sat on the edge of the diplomatic ship's bunk, sipping lukewarm coffee from a cup labeled "Property of the Galactic Repatriation Bureau." No one had answers. Just forms, translators, and apologies from a dozen alien officials too nervous to meet his eyes. He didn't care about the politics. He just wanted a ride home and a steak. On Earth, his disappearance had sparked internet conspiracies, blurry trail cam footage, and a manhunt that lasted 2 weeks before giving up. His return triggered more panic than celebration. Governments scrambled to contain the story. He'd been recovered during a classified atmospheric study mishap, according to the official report. He laughed when they told him. Back at his cabin, the woods were quieter. The deer seemed warier. His gear was still there, weathered but intact. He set the coffee pot back on its rusty stove and stared at the forest like it was another alien world. But something had shifted. He was heavier, not in body, but in presence. People felt it. The ranger who stopped by to ask questions left after 10 minutes, unsettled. A military liaison who tried to debrief him spent the whole conversation sweating. He gave them nothing. Out there, in a prison built for galactic nightmares, he'd become the pivot point for order. Here, he was just a man again. But something followed him back, an echo of that influence. He tried to ignore it. Weeks passed. Then a signal reached Earth. Encrypted, indirect, filtered through civilian telescopes. Scientists dismissed it. He didn't. It was a message from Kara 0N. System stable. Cultural anchor initiated. Behavioral echo sustained. Phase complete. He muttered. Glad to hear it. The signal included something else. A chess move. Knight to F6. He scribbled a reply on a notepad, stared at it, then burned it in the stove. But they kept coming. First, a bounty hunter landed in the woods asking to train in the ways of enduring silence. Cal threw him off his porch with a shovel. Then an ambassador showed up disguised as a hiker. Your influence reshaped one of the galaxy's most dangerous facilities. We'd like to consult. Cal shut the door mid-sentence. The visits escalated. Not attacks. Not threats. Just reverence. A species with no concept of hierarchy offered him a tree carved from memory stone. Another sent a pod filled with preserved deer DNA. One tried to build him a replica prison forest behind his cabin. He tore it down himself. He wanted no part of it. But Kara 0 and kept sending the moves. Bishop takes pawn. Queen retreats. Sometimes they matched his own board. Sometimes they didn't. The balance was shifting again. Then came the final request. An emissary in a synthetic human body appeared at his fire pit. We're not asking you to return, she said. The prison adapted because of your pattern. Now others need that same pattern. I'm not a symbol. You're proof. He stared into the fire. The second you start depending on people like me to keep your systems together, you're already screwed. Perhaps. But you didn't break. You didn't try to take control. You just held the center. And look what it got me. Silence. Then she added, they're still stable. Still following your rhythm. 1,000,000 killers and tyrants reshaped because one man asked for coffee and fixed a vent with wire. He laughed once. What's that say about them? That they wanted to believe in something. You were simple enough to follow. He didn't answer. The next day, he left the cabin for the first time in months. Went into town. Bought a new thermos. Didn't say why. The messages stopped coming. He assumed it was over. Then, years later, a child knocked on his door. Not alien. Human. Maybe 10 years old. My mom says you made the galaxy safe. He blinked. Your mom's crazy. She handed him a hand-drawn picture: stars, deer, a man with a stick, and what looked like a space prison. They teach us about you in the exchange schools. He sighed. The girl smiled. Can you show me how to make a campfire? He hesitated. Then nodded. She watched him, asking questions. He answered without thinking: why the coals mattered, why you clear the brush, why you respect the fire. Not grand wisdom. Just survival. But she listened like it was sacred. When she left, she hugged him. Thanks, Mr. Constant. He stood there a long time after. Later that night, he pulled out a chessboard. Made a move. Left it there. The next morning, the counter-move was already made. No signal. No explanation. Just a response. And somewhere, in the deepest cell of the galaxy's worst prison, a silent chamber flickered once, its light shifting in time with a man's quiet, persistent pattern. Still holding. Still balanced. Still enduring.